Okay, we are live, Lost and Found Facebook Live. Welcome to, this might be our first Facebook Live event. And of course, these are very, very trying times. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Shawn Askinosie, one of the co-founders of Lost and Found Grief Center based in Springfield, Missouri, and serving children and families throughout the Southwest Missouri area. And what I'd like to do now is just tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today. We're going to be live for maybe 45 minutes, and we promise not to be boring. And we're going to talk with Dr. Karen Scott, my co-founder, Mike Woody, Ethan Potter, Jamie Fields, and let me check and make sure, okay, we're loud and clear. Emily Givens, our executive director, says we are loud and clear, so that's awesome. And we're going to talk about Giving Tuesday. We're going to talk about what that is. We're going to talk about our kind sponsors who have already committed resources and funding to help us get through this challenging time that we're in. And we're going to talk a little bit about grief. You know that if we're going to talk with people like Karen Scott, we're going to talk about grief, and we're going to talk about how that applies right now. So that's kind of the agenda, and we're going to, I don't know if I mentioned, but we're going to talk with Jamie Fields periodically through this 45 minutes. She's our director of development here at Lost and Found, and that means money. And so we're going to talk about that and thank some of our donors who've already committed to helping us on this Giving Tuesday. So with that, I'm going to bring in Dr. Karen Scott. Karen and I have known each other for, wow, a long time. And so Karen and I co-founded Lost and Found 20 years ago, and Karen is a preeminent grief expert, really nationally recognized, and is really a treasure that we would have her expertise here in Southwest Missouri. She has served children and families, thousands of children and families in Lost and Found over the years. And so Karen, welcome to this Facebook Live, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me and for doing this.
Well, let's talk a little bit, if we can, just kind of about how Lost and Found got here. How did we get started? We'll talk about that really briefly, and then maybe we'll get some comments from Facebook followers and see if they have any questions for us. But how did we get started?
Well, we got started because of my background as a private practice counselor and a school counselor, and I saw the needs of grieving children that way. And then you had your own story, and our paths intertwined in many ways with lots of different people. And after you read Tuesdays with Maury, we had a conversation about this place I knew in Portland, Oregon called the Dougie Center. And I told you I'd always wanted to have a grief center like that here. And you said, okay, let's do it. And that's how we got started.
Yeah. You know, I remember that our first group was in January 2001. And I know you and I have talked about this a lot, but we had this terrible traumatic event on September the 11th, and we were so new in our groups. And one of the things that you taught me and us is that these traumatic events in our lives that we experience as a nation or as a planet can really have a dramatic impact on our grief. Can you talk about that a little bit and maybe how that applies to today?
Well, when people are grieving, they feel any traumatic event so much more intensely. It revives all of their own grief. And in this particular instance, with a pandemic, we've isolated people, which is probably the worst thing to happen for grieving people who already feel isolated anyway. And then all of the normal supports that we would encourage people to rely on have ultimately been removed from them in terms of they can't get together with social gatherings. They can't receive support from their families. Right now, they can't even have a public funeral. So it exacerbates all of the grief they already had.
Yeah. Well, how do you go ahead?
Oh,
how are we at Lost and Found helping people with that now?
Well, we have an amazing program staff at Lost and Found. We have an amazing staff. I don't want to just say program staff, but we got busy. Within the first week, we made calls to every single family that we were serving. We serve almost 300 people. So lots and lots of phone calls to check in, let them know that we're still here and available. And by the end of March, we started offering on Zoom our normal adult groups. We have 8 of those. That's not the parents of children, but that's older adults, parents grieving the death of a child or a young adult child, and a number of, so it's all the adults we serve that don't also have children in group. And then we've been gearing up to offer children's groups, which we launched that in a big way this week. But all the while being available via phone calls and making lots of personal contact with our families.
Oh, hey, hi, Cindy. Cindy Wersch is watching. That's cool. Well, thank you for explaining that. And let me just ask before we bring in Jamie, which I'm going to do, and she'll kind of bring us back to why we're here today on Giving Tuesday. What are you, Karen, what are you finding most helpful during this time right now in terms of your own fear, your own anxiety and panic? Because even experts like you, I'm sure, experience what all of us are experiencing. What are you finding as a tool that you're using for yourself that you might share with others right now?
Well, spiritual beliefs and my spiritual life, but I think it's really important to be intentional every single day about doing things that help fill you up, which typically is not watching the news. I'm a news junkie, but it's too much. I have to take a break from that. Do a lot of reading, music. I have a number of things that kind of fill me back up. So I'm just every single day setting aside time to do that.
Okay, well, thank you. And what I'm going to do now is bring in Jamie Fields. Hi, Jamie. Thanks for setting this up. And Jamie is our Director of Development at Lost and Found. And what's really cool and not uncommon at Lost and Found, but Jamie was a volunteer facilitator for, gosh, almost a decade before she joined us as our development director. And so thanks for being here. And Jamie, what is this? What is Giving Tuesday?
We're really excited that there is a Giving Tuesday in May. Typically it's in November, but with everything that's going on, ourselves, like many other nonprofits, are seeing events that we planned on that are no longer happening. So this is a platform for us to connect with people in a way that we normally haven't done before. So we're really, really excited for this opportunity to reach people. It gives us a chance to tell a little bit about our story. You and Karen had this incredible idea and this vision 20 years ago. And when I started facilitating at a really cute little house off of Cedarbrook, I was blown away to see this beautiful state-of-the-art facility that we're actually almost growing out of now. The work that we do is really hard, but it has nothing in comparison to the work that the grieving families and children are doing that we're serving. And to kind of echo what Karen shared, we've been reaching out to people just to check in and see how they are. And one of the little guys from my group's mother, who is an essential worker, shared every day that she goes to work, he gets upset because he's afraid that she may not come home. When a child has lost one of their people, their biggest fear is losing somebody else. And something like this, unprecedented, it's hard to bring peace to children that are suffering and struggling with their grief. Also, we're looking at ways that we can bring our kids back to group and everybody back to our building. But under the circumstances right now, we don't know when that will be. So we're getting creative and sending things in the mail that they can work on and then share on a Zoom call. It's been challenging, but also really, really rewarding. We're asking people that are hearing us now and people that have known the work that we do in the past to give something. If we could get $1 for every one of it was 18,507 followers that we had this morning, that would be incredible. We also have some incredible partners in the community that have stepped up to match $10,000 that we raised today. And definitely want to give a shout out to them because their support and their belief in the mission and the work that we're doing allows us to continue to meet people.
I'm sharing the screen right now so you can see some of those partners that you were just speaking of.
Mm-hmm. Incredible. Bobby Allison, Justin and Lindsay French, Marty Diebold, in memory of Dr. Campbell, who was actually my pediatrician growing up. Tom and Susie Singleton have been amazing. Great Southern Bank, SFC Bank, Heim Young and Associates, Southern Bank, Springfield Grocer, Holloway America, Mercy, and State Bank. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Your gift is allowing every dollar we raise to be doubled, essentially. So we know everybody's in a different place right now financially. If you can give $1, that's great. If you can share this and have somebody else give $1, even better. We appreciate everything you guys are doing. That is allowing us to meet people where they are on their grief journey now more than ever. We've never done it in their homes, but your support's allowing that to happen. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Jamie. And before you leave, and I'll bring you back here in just a second, but where right now, if people are watching on Facebook, how do they actually donate money if that's what they want to do?
There is a fundraiser link pinned to the top of our main page, but also in the event that's hosting this conversation today. So there are a couple places to do it. You can give today. We're going to keep this open through May 12th also. So we have another week.
All right. Okay. We'll bring you back in just a minute. Thanks, Jamie. Karen, you know, one of the things that you and I have experienced over these last 20 years is just an amazing group of volunteers who've become, you know, like family to us, and amazing people, and people who have really stepped up to the plate, and who themselves have been grieving. They've come to us as grieving people, and then they end up staying and helping. And one of those people I want to bring in now, and that's Mike Woody. And Mike is at our Lost and Found office right now. Mike just left as the director of marketing at Silver Dollar City, which I'm sure everybody listening to this has heard of. And if you haven't, then, well, we need to fix that. But Mike is a volunteer facilitator at Lost and Found, but has a very unique and sorrow-filled and broken-hearted story about how he found us and why. And so, first of all, Mike, welcome, and thank you for joining Karen and I here today, and thank you for being here and your willingness to talk. And I know it's not easy, especially looking into your computer laptop, but Karen and I are here with you, and maybe you could share a little bit of your story and what brought you to Lost and Found.
Well, Shawn, thank you, and Dr. Scott, good to see you as always. Happy Giving Tuesday to family and friends and people I don't even know. And yes, Mike needs a haircut, but I think most men in America do. So we'll not worry about that. But the story of my loss could take up all of our time. So for brevity, there were two significant losses. The first loss in 1984, my wife Elizabeth died suddenly. We had 4 children, ranging in ages from 9 to barely 1. Obviously, the trauma and the fear of now becoming a single father thrust into that role. And just a reminder, there was no such thing as Lost and Found at that time in our life. So we made a lot of mistakes, a lot of stumbles, a lot of pathways that we thought that were prudent that were not. And yet we survived the hard way. And I remarried 5 years later, a wonderful woman by the name of Jean Ann. She had 2 children. We did the merger. We had 6 children at that time. And that's where the second loss will come in, which is that our oldest son, Gregory, who was an amazing young man, full of high spirit and loved life in Colorado, but always the outlier in the sense of always doing things on his own schedule and his own time. His life began to tumble, get out of control. And in September of 2015, just a fateful evening of binge drinking and Valium consumption, he suffered a major respiratory event. And Gregory then died in Loveland, Colorado, the week ending of September 26th. 7 days in a coma. We were there with his bedside. I was there to see his first breath as a child, as an infant, of course, and his last breath on this earth. So it was a very challenging time for me. I felt that, as Dr. Scott would say later, Mike, we have a tendency to check the the assumptive box of saying, well, I've experienced that before. I know either how to do that now, or that'll never happen to me. And so it happened to me again. And so now it was trying to figure out what we were going to do next. After weeks of just kind of walking around with a protective cover, trying to help others, my children, my spouse, and others, I realized I was not doing enough for myself, and until I did something for myself, I would never be any good for anyone else. And so Jean Ann had friends that were in the parents' adult child loss, who said, "Why don't you join us?" We did. That was my first introduction, again, professionally, to Dr. Scott and others, and went through that program for nearly 14 months. Not that there's a time limit at all. It's just an amazing program of structured content, and then of joyful remembrance, a lot of tears, a lot of heartfelt insights. And after a while, we closed, meaning that we chose not to return. Left for a while, and Shawn, anytime that I'm talking too long,
You're not. Like, you're not. Keep going.
Okay, enough. Okay, so I felt unsettled, frankly, and not that I felt that grief loves company, in the sense of I needed to be around grieving people, but I certainly felt that with my experiences, there was a need to be there to share, as others had shared with me, and also that I would be filled again with with hope and frankly dignity. There's a lot of part of loss is a loss of dignity and self-concept. So there was a need to do all of that, and have been part of that program now for on the facilitator side for a few months.
Thank you for sharing that. Karen, as Mike's described his experience, is that what you have found over the years? Is that common, that people have this need often to remember and even remember their loved one by serving others?
Yeah, it's part of finding meaning, which is a really important aspect of kind of not exactly completing a grief journey, but once the initial painful feelings have been experienced, it's very helpful to find some sort of meaning, and often that is by giving back to others. And Mike serves as such a credible example in groups, because he's experienced 2 really devastating losses. And so he provides hope to the people who can't imagine a tomorrow that's worth living, and they meet Mike and hear his story. And as is so often the case at Lost and Found, they see someone further down the road who actually is doing well, and they want to learn, how'd you get there? And so that's really powerful for him to become involved in that way.
Yeah. Mike, since the pandemic has started and you've been a facilitator in groups, how has that been for you? Working with groups on Zoom. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it's going?
I can. 2 things, Shawn. One, bravo to Lost and Found. The Zoom, even though for us that are technology challenged, has been a wonderful tool. Frankly, I'm surprised at how convenient it is to use, and the response by folks in the group. It started out small. I have 2 sessions, and it started out small, but I believe they are talking to one another and encouraging one another to be there. We know now that we can do it, and that we can return to that in the need in the future. But there's nothing like face-to-face, and we're all very hopeful to get there. But what I have appreciated, and Dr. Scott has been on a number of these with us, is the intensity of their emotions coming through the audio and the video. It's palpable. They are so happy to have an outlet to share their story. And to that point, that's really what in my heart that I have felt that Lost and Found has been from the beginning. It's a place to tell your story, and for people that will come alongside you and encourage you, but also remind you that this is now a life journey. This is never going to go away. Sometimes that's startling, and people don't like that, but over time they realize it, and they would much rather go forward than to stay stuck. And being in isolation, other than Jean Ann asking me to go take a walk by myself, I've found what I think most people do, which is that isolation creates that pause in time, that your memory bank begins to fill up again. And I've had some moments again of stark reminders of loss, and not only loss in my life, but frankly loss of being around these people that we have grown to know and really love. They're such tender-hearted people. They can be bold, they can be coarse, and we encourage that. We want them to share their deepest thoughts. But they are warriors, every one of them. We tell them that as often as we can. That this will be one of the most difficult things you have ever done, is to come into a room filled with people you don't know, and to share the deepest sorrow that you have ever known. So it's a remarkable work that we're doing. So again, I'm not a paid pundit for contributing, but please, no one should grieve alone. And I love whoever came up with that tagline needs an award. But that's a beautiful sentiment to what this organization is all about. No one should grieve alone.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think that really says it well. And Mike, I'm so grateful that you would join us. Karen, anything else before we let Mike go?
Well, I think we often say at Lost and Found, it's the club no one wants to belong to. And people who haven't come can't imagine the intimacy and the genuineness. Grief has a way of stripping away all pretenses. And so everyone comes on equal footing, and literally the love and support they show for each other fills my heart every time we meet. And it's what sustains families through this loss, because here are people who just get it, and they don't have to explain themselves in group. And that's so very powerful.
Yeah, that's true. Mike Woody, gosh, thanks for joining us. And next time I see you, I hope you can bring me red velvet funnel cake from Silver Dollar City.
I promise. Okay. I'll trade you for some chocolate.
Okay. All right. Good. I look forward to seeing you soon, Mike. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right. Let's bring Jamie back in. Jamie, for people who are just joining us, what are we doing here? What is this that you've concocted? What is it?
We're excited to be launching our first Giving Tuesday live event with a recap from you and Dr. Karen Scott, our co-founders, and hearing updates from past participants as well. And for those who don't know a lot about Lost and Found, the services that we offer are offered at no cost to the families that we serve, which is so important, especially for those impacted by the loss of a spouse and income. Without generous partners in the community, we would not have been able to do this for 1 year, let alone 20. And we were really excited coming into 2020 and celebrating this 20th year. Nobody predicted a pandemic, which has caused us to pivot and look at things in ways that we haven't before. But one thing that has shown through all of this is that we are blessed to have the most amazing partners within this community that have helped us serve these families. And we didn't have a lot of time to put this whole thing together. And we've raised $10,000 thanks to those generous sponsors. Shawn, can you put that graphic? Yes, thank you. Thank you so much to each of you. Their generosity is going to match the first $10,000 that we raise over the next week. So you can click on the link to give on the Facebook page. You can also donate on the link in our Instagram story. If you're not on social media at all, that's okay. Go to our website and you can donate on a link there, our general donation giving link. And also, we would love to have you drop a check in the mail. Anything that you can do, whether it's $1, $5, it's going to make an impact on these families that we serve, and they need it now more than ever.
All right. Thank you, Jamie. We'll bring you back in just a minute. And thank you to our donors. And we're so grateful because we, as Jamie said, we wouldn't be able to serve these thousands of children and families all over Southwest Missouri without the generous support of people in our community. And, one of the things I get interviewed occasionally because of the chocolate business, people and journalists from around the country, and they want to know what's so great about Springfield and in Southwest Missouri. And I think one of the things that is a true hallmark of where we live is that people are so generous here. We see it over and over and over again for years, that people, and not just lost and found, but I mean, this is just a very, very generous community. And it's one of the reasons that I've lived here as long as I have. Because of the hearts of the people who are here. So thank you. Hit that link and donate. And we're going to bring another guest on, and Jamie will bring you back in just a minute. There we go. Okay. Karen, thank you for rejoining us. Probably a little technical difficulty. These things happen. There's a lot of bandwidth being occupied these days with people watching Tiger King for the 50th time. I will say, speaking of that, one of the really important pieces of information I learned yesterday from our chief operating officer at Lost and Found, or might have been one of our board members, Shannon Nagy, or it could have been from Lisa, but that Nicolas Cage is going to be playing Joe Exotic in the movie Tiger King. And I'm very, very excited about this because I love Nicolas Cage, and anyone who knows me knows that I love Tiger King. So with that, though, we'll continue with our regularly scheduled programming. Thank you, Shannon, for those updates that you've given me, and Lisa as well. Okay, so one of the other things that Karen and I, as we said before with Mike, we have actually, and this is really especially true for Karen, but we've actually experienced children, young people, who come to Lost and Found because a parent or sibling has died, and they have found Lost and Found to be a place, a safe harbor, a place where they can meet with other people who are experiencing what they're experiencing and not feel alone. As Mike said before, that no one should grieve alone. And there are so many young people who have found that to be true, but we also have another group of people who have come here, young people, who then have gone on to volunteer at Lost and Found and serve Lost and Found as a volunteer, maybe a facilitator or something else. But now we have a young person who's actually done all of those things and is now working there. And that is a huge source of pride for Karen and I. And I'm going to bring in Ethan Potter now. And everybody can see Ethan. And so Ethan just joined us full time, probably the day the pandemic started. But, anybody who's been in a board meeting with us will testify to the fact that I get pretty excited about this. I'm very enthusiastic because, Ethan, he's my boss now. I'm a volunteer facilitator in the team group. And by the way, and we'll talk about this in a minute, Ethan, but we have a team group tonight.
Yes, we do.
Tonight on Zoom. And Ethan is leading it with Melissa Cox and myself. And to think that he was a student coming to Lost and Found, now he's my boss in team group. I mean, it just could not get any better. And you talk about full circle. I get so enthusiastic about this. But Ethan, thanks for being here. Thank you, and thanks for coming to Lost and Found. And like Mike, if you would just share a little bit of your story about why you came to Lost and Found, and how you found us, and what it gave you.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Shawn, for your kind words, and thank you for inviting me, and Karen for having an amazing organization. A little bit about me, like Mike, I could go on and talk forever, but I'll keep it short and sweet. And I would like to say too, if you're early on in your grief journey, keep in mind, I'm 10 years removed. So it sounds like there's been no pain or anything like that. And that's not true. But I am at a much better place now. So the story that I'm going to tell you sounds like it was a walk in the park, and it was not. But 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, my father died unexpectedly of a heart attack. At the time, I'm the youngest of 5. My older siblings were all out of the house. When he died, they were living on their own in college, had their own families. So it was just me and my mom left at home, and we didn't know what was up and what was down, where to go. We needed help desperately. I felt alone in my grief journey. I was, one of the only teens in my hometown that had experienced something like this. We got a referral to Lost and Found. And as Jamie was talking about, the original Connor House on Cedar Brook, my mom and I showed up there one day, and I was a participant in the teen group. My mom went to the parent group that was held at the same time. My mom eventually got to a place in her grief journey that she felt like she could close. I felt like I needed a little bit more help, so I stayed in the teen group for my junior year and senior year of high school, transitioned into the young adult group. I eventually got to a place in my grief journey that I felt like I could start giving back. So I went through the facilitator training like a lot of facilitators have done, and I started facilitating in groups. I've helped facilitate in children's groups, middle school groups, teen groups, the young adult group. All during this time, I was helping volunteer at events, Run and Remember, spoke at Evening of Hope once, and that was a really great experience. So all throughout this time, I got a bachelor's degree, was motivated to go on and get a master's degree in social work. To coordinate the groups at Lost and Found, you have to have a master's degree in counseling or social work. And so that was a huge motivation because I knew that one day I wanted to come back and coordinate my own group. And I recently, about a year ago, graduated with my master's and started facilitating both of our teen groups and one of our children's groups, helping out a little bit in our young adult group. It's been a really humbling experience to go through the program here as a participant and then now come back and start working on the other end of that. It's been really cool. Melissa Cox was the facilitator in the teen group when I was a participant, and now she is still in the teen group, and I get to work alongside her and Shawn in the teen group and have a lot of fun doing that. So, and just on a personal note, it's, we're here for Giving Tuesday. A lot of generous donors in the area and across the country have made this possible, and there's no way that I will meet the donors that have helped me, but I would just thank everyone that has donated over the years, because I am a product of your hard-earned money, and I really am grateful to you for donating to such an amazing organization.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. Karen, when you hear that, do you just think to yourself, my work is done here?
Yeah, if I had a big victory flag, I'd be waving it right now. And Ethan, thank you for being so articulate and for addressing donors, because I think one of the frustrations on the fundraising end is, gosh, if they could just see and have that heartfelt experience that we have when we see someone go from a place of such pain and despair to where you are now. Your dollars given to Lost and Found truly change lives, and in a way that's almost impossible to put into words. But seeing is believing, and thank you for being a shining example of that. And yeah, I feel as proud as if one of my kids has just graduated and launched, and because we've watched Ethan for 10 years now work toward this goal. So exciting.
Ethan, one of the things that you have spearheaded with Janine, and that is, how do we at Lost and Found have this trauma of a pandemic that's cast a shadow over everything and the whole world, and especially cast a shadow over what we were trying to do so desperately when we met in person with people who were coming to Lost and Found every night of the week in small groups. Then this shadow deepens to the point that people can't leave their homes. So what have you guys been doing to try to reach out to groups and people at Lost and Found, and how's that going?
Yeah, so I believe Karen had mentioned it earlier, but we have made contact with all of our families individually early on. Keep in mind, I started working full-time right as their office closed, and so I was working from home for the first 6 weeks. So I'm trying to jump into a new job, and I hit the ground running, making phone calls and sending notes to our participants. But we were able to quickly pivot what we do. As a clinician, being in person face-to-face is so important to pick up on some of those cues that you don't get over Zoom. But I think I found in my Zoom groups that people wanted to connect with other grieving people. We talk about isolation, and we're self-isolating, and so we need that connection of people that have a grief journey. So we were able to pivot quickly to offering Zoom groups, and this technology has allowed people to, again, be in contact with people that are on walking a similar grief journey. And we have heard, I work now primarily with the teenage group and the young adult group, and we've heard things such as, I feel more comfortable participating in a virtual group, or I have better access to participate in a Zoom group. So this has been a tremendous success, in my opinion, to allow people to still have that connection, especially with their teenage group. Of course, they have, they can text and FaceTime and things like that. But a lot of times we hear that our teens don't have someone in their life outside of Lost and Found that share a death. And so for them to be able to join our group and connect with their friends at Lost and Found who know what it's like has been a huge advantage for them. Okay.
Karen, anything to add to that? Or
I'm watching some of the live comments, and to talk about the connections that people feel. Jennifer Denny, who's a former kid and is now an adult, has weighed in. Nikki Keeter, who was in group with Ethan, is saying hooray to Ethan. And Stephanie Schell, who was a former facilitator. Melissa, of course, is on. Denise Meyer. I mean, there's a family here. Again, it has to do with the intimacy of what people share and being so genuine, and they stay connected forever. So thanks for your live comments, folks. And just, again, to the donors, it's a lifelong connection people make here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ethan, one thing I want to ask before I let you go, and I've talked with others about this, as an expert yourself, I mean, even though you just started on your job, you've been with us for a decade. So as I was speaking with Karen earlier, even people who have trained and been educated and worked with grieving people, we ourselves grieve too, right? We're not immune from this. We're not immune from panic or anxiety or fear or grief. So what are you doing yourself these days to help you? And maybe something that you could share that's helping you that might help some others.
Absolutely. So it is a very difficult time right now. And just the work that we do at Lost and Found can sometimes be hard to listen to other people's stories. And so self-care is so important to practice. And we talk a lot about self-care in our groups. And I teach a lot of breathing activities to the teens. And I think probably most of the time they think I'm, crazy for doing a 5-finger breathe or a triangle breathe or something like that. But really, when you start to learn about mindfulness and come into a place of mindfulness, it can really be beneficial in situations like we're living in right now. kind of grounding yourself and centering yourself. So I do practice mindfulness daily and do deep breathing to kind of help myself stay grounded and focused. And like Karen, I've been staying away from the news. There's a lot of numbers and information being thrown out on the news. And so kind of really unplugging from the news and social media around what's going on, because I find my anxiety rising as I kind of tap into some of that. So just breathing and unplugging.
All right. What are we going to talk about in group tonight?
We are going to talk about memory boxes. So I'm very excited. This is an activity for participants to share some items of their loved one that are special to them. And I love this activity specifically because we get to learn a little bit more about each person's loved one and their personality. So I'm very excited.
Okay. Wow, Ethan, thanks for being here, and thanks for being who you are, and for all of the things that you do. And I would say for me, one of the things that and this is going to sound maybe even strange, but a self-care thing for me is to do this group with Ethan. And I'm sure, Karen, that you find that people find our facilitators and volunteers, they get help for themselves by helping others. Isn't that right?
That's true. And a comment that we often hear is, oh gosh, on the way to group tonight, I was so frazzled, so tired, terrible day at work. And I was thinking, why do I put myself through this? And then we have a pre-group meeting and a post-group meeting with our volunteers. And then in post-group, they'll say, yeah, this is why I do this, because it fills me back up. Again, you're touching a life and making a difference.
Ethan, thank you for being here. I'll see you tonight.
All right.
Okay, on Zoom. Okay, let's bring Jamie back in. Gosh, that was so cool to talk with Ethan. Last visit from Jamie. Jamie, for people who are just joining us on this Facebook, what are we doing here? What is this?
We've launched Giving Tuesday Live, and we were very blessed to come up with some partners that have $10,000 in matching funds for the first 10,000 we raise. So we're very excited. Every dollar that you donate makes a huge impact on people like Ethan. We encourage people, give in memory of a loved one that you've lost. We would love to see your favorite memory with that person or a picture. Storytelling is so important as people are working through their own grief. And one thing that society seems to do is not talk about death because it's a hard topic. But the best gift that you can give someone is letting them know that you remember their person or that you want to hear about that. So I encourage people, we'd love to see your stories, share those, give a gift in honor of them. You can donate on the link on our Facebook page or also on the link in our Instagram story. Also, please help us by sharing this. This video can be watched for some time. In addition to that, tag your friends, tell them why you have a connection. We have an incredible junior board, and they hit the ground running with this and wanted to help. A lot of them have their own stories. So we're excited to see that and just reaching everyone that we can. One of the biggest challenges for me, being involved with Lost and Found for nearly 10 years, is hearing someone's story of loss and they say, I didn't know Lost and Found was there, or I wish I had known so I could have told my sister or my coworker. So please help us share the message of what we're doing. And if you know the people that have been our matching donors, say thank you to them too, because this isn't the first time that they've helped support these families. Right.
Okay, Jamie, thank you for being here. As she said, this video will be up for a while, and we really appreciate you, Jamie, and Liz putting this together. Karen, before we conclude, we sometimes think in these Facebook Live events that people have watched the whole thing. There could have been someone who might have just joined us maybe a few minutes ago or 10 minutes ago. But I'd like for you to, again, speak a little bit to this idea of what's happening in our culture right now, this trauma that can really have a triggering effect on the grief that people may have experienced and thought that they might have, quote, put it behind them. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Grief is a very lonely experience, and it's a heavy experience emotionally. That's kind of mirrored in the pandemic. And so a huge, sad event like this, and something that's really kind of shattered our sense of safety Grief shatters your sense of safety. And so it brings all of that back to those who are grieving, no matter how long ago the loss was. So it's normal to have some of those feelings, and it's important to be very intentional about taking care of yourself, not thinking that there is something wrong with you, but recognizing the emotional toll of your own past grief as well as what's going on right now.
Okay, this is good. As has been said by Jamie and you and Ethan and others, we're not really sure when groups will be able to meet together again. But one thing that we are sure of, if you are watching this live or you're watching the recording and you're asking yourself, is Lost and Found open? Maybe you're saying to yourself, I have experienced a death of a loved one, and can I call Lost and Found now, even though people are at home or businesses aren't open? And the answer is yes. Lost and Found is open. And Lost and Found through this entire pandemic has never closed. Yes, people were sheltering in place, but we were always reaching out to those people who were vulnerable, who trusted their open hearts with us at our offices on Glenstone. And what we have done, I think successfully, and will continue to do, is engage the people who need us. And so if you're out there and you're thinking, well, but I didn't ever go to groups, and can I start now, and can I call them, and can I talk to somebody? The answer is yes. You can call, you can look online, you can look on Facebook, someone will answer your email, will answer your Facebook message, or you can just call the number, which is, what is it, Karen? 417 what?
865-9998.
Okay, 865-9998. Area code 417. And this might be a good time to say, we have people, in fact, in my teen group, we have someone who was driving 2 hours to get to group. So if you're wondering, well, am I close enough? I mean, you know what? If you're in Southwest Missouri, you can call us and we'll be able to assist you. One last question, Karen. What about individual work that you guys are doing at Lost and Found? Has that been continuing?
We have continued. We do offer individual counseling for a fee. We've continued that via phone or Zoom as people feel willing to do that. And I don't want to get away without giving credit to some people. The program staff, Janine Gerhart, Nanette Thomas, and Sarah Brown, who haven't been on here, deserve a ton of credit. I don't even have words to describe how hard they've worked to shift gears, learn to do this from home, and make individual contact. That also includes, we're a team at Lost and Found. Lisa Hallam, Emily Givens, Liz Walrath. They've all, and of course, Jamie, who's been on here. It's been, and did I not say Nanette? Nanette's a program coordinator. Nanette's been with us since almost the very beginning. They've just, I think I said Sarah. They've all just absolutely put their noses to the grindstone to figure out a new way, because they love our families and want to continue to support them. And then to donors, we are a member of the National Alliance for Grieving Children, which is a national organization for grief centers. And there are some grief centers that are bigger than we are, but we are now a comprehensive grief center. And I meet people who are in much larger cities, and they've been trying to shepherd a grief center along for years and are nowhere near where we are. They don't have their own buildings. And that is absolutely a credit to the generosity of this community and our donors who trusted us and believed in us and made all this possible.
Right.
Thank you from our staff, and most especially from all of our families.
Right. All right. Well, this will conclude our Facebook Live event for Giving Tuesday. Remember that you can give all week long. You can give anytime. You can call Emily Givens or Jamie Fields at Lost and Found, and believe me, we'll take a check or credit card or anything that you'd like to give us, because we need your help, and we hope that you'll give today. We're so grateful for any amount of money. And Karen, thanks for doing this with me, and thanks for being who you are, and thanks for being a treasure to our community. And I'll hopefully see you soon. Okay. Take care, everybody. God be with you.